Hello, hello, and welcome. This week, I am so excited to bring my first duo of guests. I have complete admiration for them. These creators decided that there wasn't enough opportunity for their craft in their city, so they created their own theater company with a special artist statement that encourages all people to fully express themselves. What they have done is impressive and absolutely piqued my interest. I hope they piqued yours. Apologies for my leg again hitting the table during an interview, and there are a few microphone thumps. But it shouldn't get in the way of these two and their brilliance. Buckle up for a fun ride with Jasmine Sherman and Maisie Gospodarek. This episode was recorded some time ago and published now due to me learning how to edit and publish a podcast, so some info might be a little old, but I hope you can still use all of the information to look up their work and your interest is piqued. I hope you are having a grand day, and please enjoy this week's episode that I've titled, That's with 2 S's, 'Cause We Ladies. Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Pique My Interest, a podcast dedicated to creativity. My name is Scoob Decker, and I am an artist. This podcast was created to learn more about the different styles of art, and more importantly, meet some incredibly awesome artists and explore their craft and how they create. I am here in Missoula, Montana, with a couple kick-ass ladies. Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Maisie Gospodarek.
And I'm Jasmine Sherman.
And what is your craft?
Theater.
Yeah, we own a theater company, so MissCast Productions with 2 S's because we're ladies.
Because we ladies.
Because we ladies.
Awesome. What's so special about MissCast Productions?
Well, we started this production company in 2020 with kind of the mission statement of creating more inclusive theater. So we're trying to break some stereotypes, not only on the stage, but kind of in the
process.
Yes, the process, the productions we pick. Well, you can talk a little bit more about typecasting.
We're both women who have done it. We're actors, so that's our start. Is we were actors, and throughout our processes of auditioning for stuff, etc., we both keep running into this issue of typecasting, which for those who may not be part of the theater world is when your look, your voice, your overall vibe is kind of, you get stuck in this box, and you're a character actress, you're a leading lady, and then you kind of get stuck in this box forever. But the reality of the world is that everyone falls in love, not just thin people.
Or short people.
Or short people, or
white people.
People that look nice together aesthetically.
Or able-bodied people.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's trying to break those stereotypes. And on the flip side of that, thin, petite people, they want to be character roles too. Mm-hmm. So it's about coming into the audition process and not having these preconceived notions in your head and just letting anyone audition for any part and calling back who seems like they were most fit for the role, not caring about aesthetics and inclusivity, right? Telling stories about, telling queer people stories. As a queer person, I can say that. It's fine.
Queer people.
We are queer people. Story inclusivity as much as you can get in Montana.
Yeah.
Also focusing on including disabled actors when we can as well, and just telling those stories. When we're looking for our seasons, those are the kinds of stories we're looking for.
Yeah. I also think relevant stories, it's you want to put on theater that means something to everybody, and I don't know, sometimes that can be hard to do, everyone's like, Shakespeare's timeless, and it's like, well, is it? I mean, they're 14 and she is a maid, so I'm never gonna relate to that, but and it's not that Shakespeare isn't valid, but we were hoping with this theater company that we could just fill a gap, because there are so many other great companies around us and so many great people doing great things, and so it's they are doing what they should be doing, and we can maybe do something different and just fill in that gap a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So you created this theater company by yourselves. Why? There's a ton of theater in Missoula, but why did you create your own? Out of the different theaters that you could be auditioning for, you decided to create your own with your own mission statement. Why?
Well, I think it goes back to what Jasmine was saying. We we both started as actors, as performers, and we've done the hustle where you audition and you work and you work and you work to be in someone else's production. And eventually we just felt like people weren't taking a chance on us, because there's a lot of talented people in this town and in every town, frankly. And so we thought, well, we know what we can do. And the best way to do that is going to be to start it ourselves. And so through the process of thinking, let's put on a show, let's start a production company, we also had to think about why it mattered to us. Because yes, we wanted to be on stage. We'd be lying if we weren't like, oh yes, we want to perform. But we also thought, okay, if we're going to do this, then we need to make sure that it matters in some way. And it matters to us to be on stage and to get an opportunity that we might not otherwise have gotten. And so if we can extend that opportunity to other people, then we'll be making kind of a difference that we're hoping to make.
Yeah, and there's so many talented people in this town, especially film presenting actors. There are so many, and I'm like, we wanted to be that place where they can feel comfortable coming and auditioning and, knowing that they have a really solid shot, and being able to extend that opportunity not only to actors, but, hopefully soon other directors, and just giving a voice for people who maybe feel like they haven't had a voice.
And what makes MissCast different than the other theaters in town? Right.
I think also because we are not, we are so new, we get to have this really cool place where we can kind of do whatever we want. We don't have our audience aren't expecting something of us. So we can do more experimental stuff, local writers. We did a horror play, which is like not very common. And also it was, also we can do things that's maybe more adult geared. Because, since we are small, we can be more niche and we can be more experimental, I think.
Yeah, people haven't nailed us down quite yet, which means that we're going to keep them guessing.
No,
never let them know you're next to movie.
Exactly. Fantastic. No, it's definitely going into a children's theater, you have an expectation. Going into a university show, you have an expectation.
Well, and a university even is, to some degree limited by their doing shows for university students, Yeah, it's, as much as you can have 22-year-olds play 80-year-olds, it's not always the most
believable.
It depends.
I've seen it happen.
It's happened in our show once, so.
You've said that you both are actors. What else is your background? I know that you have a musical background.
You could start.
Yeah. Well, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Music, Voice Performance, and in Theater Acting. I also did 3 summers at the Brewery Follies, which is a comedy club in Montana. It's somewhat underground, but the people that love it. It's kind of a weird culty following. So basically that place, in 2 weeks, you write a show, original comedy, memorize it, and put it up. So it's kind of like fast-paced, in-your-face sketch and comedy and parody songs. That's honestly, doing that job is what gave me the confidence in myself that I'm like, oh, I can write, I can create my own material. I have the ability to create, perform, and put out my entire own self into the world, and people like it. They laugh at it. So yeah, that's kind of my background, and Maisie has kind of a similar thing with the Summer Stock Theater.
Yeah, so we both did our undergrad at the University of Montana, which is how we met. Actually.
Name drop.
But I have a degree in English lit, and then I have a minor in political science and a minor in vocal performance. But I don't know why I didn't ever get it, just go get a degree in theater, because I was constantly...
You're kind of doing 2 other things.
I guess, but I was constantly putting myself in... The reason I started as a poli-sci major, and then I was taking so many English lit classes, I was like, maybe I should not be a poli-sci major. But then also I was like, I did choir, I was in cabaret, I love to perform, I love people looking at me, and so that's what I wanted to do. So kind of that, and then I did summer stock in Phillipsburg, Montana. Similar to Jasmine, it was a little less raunchy, I think, than the Follies. Yeah. We weren't allowed to say quite as much on stage, but it was a similar thing where it was like a vaudeville show, you'd put on kind of sketches and just really fast paced. And then there was also some straight plays or farces that we would put on in addition to that. And yeah, it was just a thing where it was for a month, you just rehearsed for 12 hours a day, and you were writing a show and coming up with new concepts, and it was exhausting, but it was like, yeah, I feel really
drinking
fulfilled.
And eating mac and cheese cups, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But you just feel like, wow, I'm part of something. And like when I first started that job, I was kind of timid, and then I came back for a second season, and suddenly I was like, you know what? I do have ideas, and I know that we could put on this and this, and suddenly I was like feeling really validated in what I could do. And so yeah, when Jasmine came to me and she was like, do you think we should write a show? I was like, yeah,
we can do that.
I think we can do that.
We've done that before.
Yeah.
So with MissCast, you write your own shows.
We have done that, yes. Our first show was a parody cabaret called The Ladies Who Lead. And what we did was took main musical theater leading lady songs that you know and love, and we parodied them.
Yeah,
so
all the songs they tell you don't ever do it in an audition. We're like, we're going to put all those songs in one cabaret.
Yeah, exactly. Like Defying Gravity and Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, and just like,
Me.
yes, Think
Stuff
of
like
Me.
that.
Everything that you know. So it was just like, kind of, I mean, the reason people love musical theater is because you love hearing stuff like that. And so, and also, little known fact, if you write parodies of stuff, you don't have to pay for the rights for them.
Because parody law is very tight.
Exactly.
Ladies know how to do it.
Yeah.
Jump through hoops.
Yeah. So we just we came up with that concept, and then we just built a show around it. And it was weird and funny, and I think very feminist kind of in the end.
Yeah.
We really just were writing about stuff we know, and it's like, damn, this is a feminist show.
My favorite story about that show is I was at a comedy show. I was at a stand-up comedy show, and I went to one of the male performers after the show, and I was like, oh, great job tonight. And then he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah, my name's Jasmine. You know, I was like, actually, next week I'm putting on a show. It's called The Ladies Who Lead. It's all women. He's like, you lost me. And I was like, oh, never mind. I did horribly tonight. And you're a horrible person.
You lost me. He's like, girls.
He's like, that's a good joke. Sexism, right?
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
How did you meet, and what was the catalyst for this magical duo that is in front of me today?
Oh, goodness.
Well, we met as freshmen.
Yeah,
weird.
Maisie, you had the crush on the same guy I did.
Yes.
Saw her talking to him on her bike.
And she hated me
out
for
of my
a year.
car, and I hated her for a solid year. No.
But actually, that is true. But we we did choir together. I think that was most we kind of were in.
We were kind of on the outskirts of friendship until probably got closer during our cabaret, and so just through classes and stuff. But then we lived together as well.
Yeah. We're both slobs. So.
We're both messy, so it didn't
Can't
work
ever
out.
do that again.
But yeah, I mean, we've become really close friends ever since we lived together, and we kind of have a similar story of, you know, just being frustrated and feeling like we didn't have our break, and similar backgrounds with the writing of comedy, etc. So it kind of just made sense that we should catalyst this theater together and be each other's support system, basically.
For sure. We're also both from small towns. We had
right.
I think we were like big fish in a small pond in our own communities. Right. Graduating class of 14, so
full ride scholarship, class of 11.
Yeah,
no big deal.
Exactly. And so it was like, heck yeah, I love doing this. I love singing. I'm so jazzed to go to college. And then of course, you know, you
get hit with that reality.
And there's a lot of different people. But yeah, I think the other reality was like, well, you're too tall for that, or you're too big for that, or you are a soprano, but you look like you should play the character role, or whatever that was. And so,
you know, you can't tell from my voice, but I'm a soprano. It does not match.
And so, I mean, the hardest thing about hearing that is you can't change it, right? Like you can practice till the cows come home, and like we both like put the educational work in, but to be told,
we could chop you off at your knees, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. But to be told, it's like, oh well, it's just kind of you that we're not interested in. That's really hard, and I think
which no one said outright, but you know.
But it's kind of eventually, and that is not just like an indictment on Missoula. That's just theater as a whole, I think. Performance as a whole. I mean, look at Hollywood,
Half
right?
the things they teach you when you go to theater school is like, know your type and lean into your type, and you should have a haircut that matches your type, and you should be only performing and learning songs that are your type, and you're like,
yeah, when you go to an audition.
Isn't acting supposed to be versatile? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You know?
Thus, MissCast Productions.
Sorry, that was quite the ride to get along there. But.
Yeah.
One of my exciting reasons of having you on pique my interest is because you are my first guest to where your craft, your art form, is not your career. you both have side jobs. Well, I guess the side job would be MissCast Productions.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. How does this fuel you as not your career? And how do you pour your heart and soul into something that isn't your career?
It's tough because, I mean, the goal is to make it the career, right? Like, I mean, long term, it's very difficult to make theater profitable, but my dream goal is that in 10 years, this will be my full-time job. Because I'm a waitress, and I mean, waitressing is not my career. You know, I would never say that. It's just a means to an end. It's a capitalist hole. But the really nice thing about waitressing is that I can afford my lifestyle on 30 hours a week, and my schedule is flexible as heck. So, I just censored myself. Heck. Flexible as heck. You're welcome. God, that sounds weird coming out of my mouth. But yeah, so it's an easy job. I don't have to, I go to work, I do my job, I go home. It's wonderful because it does 30 hours a week. I get to have all this free time opened up for creating. And that's kind of the whole goal, is to eventually get to a point where we can pay ourselves. I think. So, but I mean, Maisie does have more of like a standard actual career and all that stuff.
Yeah, I manage a fabric store in town, and it is actually a job I enjoy, but I will say what's hard about it, how it conflicts with this, is it is a very creative job in and of itself. I do a lot of writing and like photo planning, and I'm just kind of like, I'm technically the manager, but I would even say that I'm more of like the creative director, and as such as it is in a fabric scenario. And so that can be draining in some ways because, you know, you get done thinking really hard all day, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to go think again. But at the same time, I love doing theater, and I love building something from the ground up. So I guess it's a mixed bag, you know what I mean? I recently did get to like haggle with my boss, and I'm now only working 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week.
The future is here.
It really has made all the difference because we put on a show in February, and I don't think I could have done it if I was working a full-time job. So luckily I have a boss who, she like is happy with the work I do, and so she's willing to lend me some concessions, and I really recognize how so many people who are artists and who want to pursue that, they don't have that flexibility, you know, and it's tough. So, I don't know. I guess it's like, it is both. It's a mixed bag. It is freeing in some ways. It's really nice to just like get to do this and build this and be like, wow, look, we can do this in our free time. But
when you are in the thick of it, it's go to work and then come home and then do the rehearsal, and then you have to do blocking or whatever else, or, you know,
or producer stuff
or social media. So it's like, it's basically having 2 full-time jobs, and one of them you're not getting paid for, but you're doing it out of the love of your heart.
Although we are trying to pay ourselves at some point. We
might pay ourselves a full $200 this year.
Yeah, no kidding.
Even if it's not financial, you're paying yourselves in the satisfaction with your show.
And that's true.
What people don't understand, non-artists don't understand, when an artist showcases their craft, it's so fulfilling, and it is. So there is a little bit of that there.
Which is why artists get taken advantage of, but that's a whole different podcast.
It is a little different, yeah. But it is, I will say that is a little bit part of our manifesto as well, is that we do, though we're not paying ourselves, we really make an effort to pay our performers
as much as we possibly
can,
and
our production crew and etc. It's not a ton right now because we're making money off the show we put on, but we have thus far we put on 4 shows, and every performer and musician, choreographer, stage manager, etc., they've all gotten compensated for their time. So that's better than nothing.
Sure is.
And will entice a lot more actors to audition.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's true.
hopefully.
All right, let's say in 2 months, MissCast is putting on a production. Walk me through the process. Give me the cliff notes. How do you put on a production?
Man, in 2 months.
For however long it takes.
I'm like maybe halfway.
I'm just curious, as somebody who started their own theater production.
We've learned a lot in the last year, I will say. I think when we started out, we did not give ourselves the time that we needed. In general, we like to have, I would say, we like to have our auditions a month before rehearsal processes even start, which is not entirely common, but I mean, since, we're dealing with shorter rehearsal processes, I like personally to have my actors at least to have time with their lines before they show up.
We've also found that that's helpful for accessibility. We had a sight impaired person in our horror play who did an excellent job, but he can't read a
if he
script.
got cast on a Wednesday and started rehearsal on Monday, then it's, then he's having to use his audio equipment to hear the lines and then say them, because he can't hold a script in his hands and read it. So it is kind of just a good thing overall. Like, it leads accessibility for people who need more time with their lines, for people who can't be reading scripts on stage. And also, then you have, as the director, you have 3 weeks to think about the directing and the blocking in regards to the cast that you've already put together. So it's like, now I know who I'm dealing with. That might change my ideas a little. So that's how I prefer to do a month before rehearsals even start. So then we're going before that, I would say at least a 1 month, 2 months is preferable. Before that, we'd like to have our first production meeting. I want to give my designers plenty of time to do their stuff, and we don't want to be hassling and stressing out about getting design concepts, like doing that stuff during the rehearsal process. In an ideal world, we would already have a lot of the design worked out before we even started our rehearsals.
Yeah, which is kind of our goal in the future. But we need to hire somebody to build the set potentially, or help with music direction, or help with choreography, depending on the type of show we're putting on. So we try to 2 months in advance. And then also, if it's a musical, that takes a little more work ahead of time. If we need to work on arrangements, figure out, just hire a piano player and just a lot of kind of other stuff like that. So I would say we 4 months
for one show, just overall.
Yeah, and
from pre-production to etc.
Yeah, and the rehearsal process is usually around
5 to 6 weeks, depending on the type of show. Okay.
So we're hoping in the future actually to not be flying by the seat of our pants, but to have
things more planned out.
Well, to have kind of a season in place. And we didn't know how well we were going to do when we started, so we didn't get to go there. So hopefully going forward, we'll be able to pick a few shows in advance, and then that will help streamline the production process overall. But what would happen, say with our first show, which we wrote, once we had it written, we were like, okay, now we're going to find a cast.
Right.
And we put out an audition notice. We had people send in virtual auditions because it was still at the tail end of COVID. We found a music director. We found the music we needed, and our pianist was really great and was able to help with music direction. And then we found a band, and then we had to find rehearsal space and plan rehearsals. And so it's kind of, as we were going through it, we're like, oh, we got to solve that problem. Right. We started coming across everything. And then likewise, from the production side, we were like, okay, well, now we need to get our social media up and running and get bios and have pictures of our cast and write a press release and reach out to different newspapers and set up interviews and try to get some buzz for the show itself. Right. Booking a space is the first thing you have to do.
Yeah, you gotta book the venue. But then it's for example, that show, we also didn't have designers for that show, so then we're also on our days off, mornings off, running to Goodwill, trying to find costumes and make props and weird stuff. So it's the more prepared you can be, the better, because there's going to always be something that jumps up and scares you in the middle of the actual process.
Yeah, exactly.
We've had two different shows where people either weren't able to make performances, or someone dropped out during the rehearsal process, or someone had COVID, or...
Yeah, COVID has been a tricky thing for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I think that is the truest thing. It's no matter in any process, there's going to be things that come up that you can't predict. That's just how it works. And so if we can be prepared for everything we can control, then when something happens that we can't control, it's not the end of the world. It's not the final straw that's making the house come down. It's oh yeah, okay, we can work our way around this problem. Right. It's not a problem you're adding to the huge pile. You know what I mean?
So your experience is definitely just experiment. Just go out and try it, and then learn from that.
Learn from your mistakes.
That's fantastic.
For sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, no. Nobody helped us. We did it ourselves.
Well, and for my peakers out there, if you can't tell, they lead off each other really well, and their rep is just great. And but my question is, what happens when you have a conflicting creative idea? Do you ever butt heads at some point, or do you either let somebody take a certain show for a while, or Do you have any other creative blocks between each other?
I think that's interesting because we've kind of done a lot of different processes. We've done a show where we were both co-directing and in it. We've done a show, there was a show where I directed when Maisie wasn't involved in the process. There's a show that Maisie directed, I wasn't involved in the process. And then there's also a show where I directed and Maisie was an actor. So, like, we've kind of explored all of these different power dynamics, and I think what's helped us personally is just establishing our roles early on of being like, for example, for the first show we did, I was like, I'll direct my numbers, you direct your numbers, and we'll get feedback from the cast on the numbers that we're in together. So just establishing, like, hey, this is my number, I'm going to do this. Or, like, with the show that you were in as an actor, I said, I'm going to be the director, you're going to be the actor. Like, when we're in the rehearsal space, I'm in charge, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just making sure that because we didn't want it to be weird power dynamics of, like, Maisie's in the cast, and then people might feel like, oh, well, she has some sort of...
Yeah, assistant director
power, or I feel like I can't bring something up because she's a producer. So we wanted to make sure that roles were really clear and very established in each process. And then when the other two shows, when the other one wasn't involved in the process, we were just there as production support. So I think that's been the best thing, is just establishing, hey, you're in charge here. I'm not going to say crap about your process. I think the biggest thing is, like, if you ask, I will let you know. But if you're not going to ask for my opinion on something, I'm not going to just give it unprovoked.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly right. We just kind of lay out the ground rules. I also think that, I don't know if you feel this way, but I think theater in general kind of sets itself up for that. When it's organized theater, I'll say. Sometimes that's not... Sometimes I've been in productions where it wasn't that way, but, like, when your director says something, you learn that you just take the note, right? Right. You might have, they were like, you were late for that cue, you needed to get on stage. And it could have been for a billion reasons, like your costume was messed up, your whatever. Like, maybe it wasn't within your control, but it doesn't matter. You just need to take the note and go with it. And so I think that you get an understanding of how that hierarchy works, and because we have been on both sides of it, it was actually kind of good in our first show, I think, because we were able to work really closely together.
Right.
Which is good because I think we both needed the support. The
Right.
imposter syndrome is
What's
real.
going on?
So we're all like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And it's like, no, it's not. But it also meant that because we were working on our own numbers, we felt like, I don't know.
I thought of this concept. I know how it's supposed to come out. You know?
Exactly.
And so I'm not going to say, hey, Maisie, that song that you wrote yourself, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So I think thus far, I will say that when Jasmine put on the show herself, it was the horror play called I Am Acquainted with the Night. I was not involved in that process. I was actually in a different show. I was doing Rocky Horror Live, which is not affiliated with our company. And it was hard because Jasmine was, like, coming up against things that I wasn't fully privy to because it wasn't in the rehearsal process, and we weren't checking in as much as we should have been just as producers. Too. And so then I was, like, coming up to speed, and I was like, crap, like, I should be helping you more, you know what I mean? And so then, when it was my turn and I was in that position to put on the show, Jasmine was also doing a show, she was directing, but we had made, like, a pact with each other. We were like, okay,
once a week.
Yeah, once a week on Fridays, we need to get together and just, like,
check in.
Yeah, let me tell her what's happening. So if I do need help, she could help with it. So, like everything else in this process, we have been just learning as we go.
Communication.
Yeah.
Communication, support, trust.
Yeah, and also, I don't know, just, like, I think we trust each other. We both have we trust each other's abilities and opinions, and so, you know, even if there is, like, a tough spot where we do rub together, even if it means we have to, like, cool off and come back later and be like, this is what I thought about that, I think we're both really receptive to that. And so, you know, there might be creative tension every now and again, but in a lot of ways, we line up on what we're thinking.
Going a little bit further with a creative block, I know having each other is very supportive and building off each other. But as an artist, we all run into a creative block. What do you do to try and overcome that? Maybe individually. I know, Maisie, you talked about you work in a fabric store, which can be a little creative outlet of some kind. But is there anything else that you do to try and inspire your creativity within yourself?
For me, I think the most important thing, as it relates to theater, but really in general is really being excited about an idea to start with. It could be, and it can kind of be from any angle, but just like having a strong concept, and that could be big, like for a show or just for a number, or just an idea about how to spin this, or like from what angle to write this or direct this or whatever. As long as I start with something that I'm really excited about to begin with, then it means as I'm going forward, I can refer back to that excitement, and it helps me, it keeps me from feeling blocked, I guess. I also, because I'm a lit major, I've done a lot of like forced reading and writing for hours on end in college. And what I had found was just like, just put it out there. It can be the worst thing you've ever written or thought of, but put it down on paper and then take a break from it and come back and look at it. And it's, when it comes to writing, that's the most helpful thing. Another thing that I think has helped keep me from feeling creatively blocked is like theater, right? There's kind of a built-in thing where a lot of times you're putting on somebody else's work, right?
Right.
The show might be written for you, and it's just a matter of coming up with a concept that feels really true to you and really relevant to what you're trying to do, and then going through it that way. So I think that, like, compared to a person who writes books for a living, say, I we have a leg up when it's like, oh yeah, we'll produce a show with a script that exists.
If I'm not feeling creative, I'll just go find somebody else's
work. Yeah, but that's kind of how it is for me, I think, is just making sure I'm really excited before I start the process.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh boy. So again, coming back to the ADHD, it's my whole personality. No, but like, I only realized this in the last 2 years about myself, so it's really interesting now to know that that's kind of what's going on. I have a really hard time focusing on things, and especially if it's something that I procrastinate everything. So a deadline helps me.
Deadlines.
If I need to get something done, I will give myself fake deadlines, or I set miniature goals for myself. Okay, you just have to get 5 pages blocked tonight. Just block 5 pages, and then you can go do whatever, play Tears of the Kingdom or whatever you want to do. And usually when I give myself a small little thing to accomplish, I'll get into it, and then I'll end up doing 15 pages of blocking, and then I'm like, heck yeah. So a lot of times it's just about fooling myself into starting. I have to trick myself a lot in my life. Mm-hmm. And then the nice thing is every third Tuesday when the moon's out right, I'll just pop into hyper-focus mode, and I'll just spend 10 hours on something and get a lot done. So it's like, if I randomly unlock that, I can draw till 3 a.m. or whatever. When that weird click happens, when I can focus on my creativity, and because I like to draw too, so there's other things that I do just besides this outlet. That's that's a juice, because it's just like I'm in it, I want to do it. Unfortunately, there's no way to trick yourself into getting into that mode. So it's like, when it happens, it's great. When it's not happening, I just kind of have to pull myself out of bed and force myself to sit down and force myself to start. And then, it's, to a certain degree, when you're talking about particularly directing, it is formulaic in a sense that, it's a skill that you can build and grow. And so even if you don't have your creative juices flowing, sometimes you're still able to function and do that task, that job, because it's just something that you know how to do at a certain point. But again, having excitement about it always helps. Luckily, when you're in an act where you're doing a directing process, you're getting energy from your cast, mm-hmm. too. And when they're coming up with all these cool ideas, it sparks your creative idea, and you're just bouncing off each other. Oh my God, I loved that. What if we added this to it? Yeah. Hold up, stop. I think you should do this. Let's try it out. It's because theater's so collaborative, you don't always have to unblock yourself, because you have other people in the room to inspire you constantly.
100%. I also had written down deadlines, and then that as well.
Deadlines.
The English lit major I asked to come on my podcast, and she came with notes.
What? Who would have thought?
I love the fact that you brought up creative juices, because that's literally my questions about creative juices.
I would know that if I had written notes.
But is there any specific thing that will get you? You said pop into hyper focus. I love that idea. But is there anything specific that you can do to help that? I know some people like to go for a run. Some people, like you said, you like to draw. I don't know.
The run might work. I've never tried it.
That's funny.
What gets your creative juices flowing?
Woof.
Or like you said, if they don't flow, do you need a deadline to force yourself to get out of bed and do it?
Deadlines do help, just in terms of, I think that it's really easy to feel overwhelmed by everything. And, we've talked both about having jobs that are in addition to this. And so once you put something on your radar, even just a trick deadline, it just makes you feel like, okay, I have to make time for that. That's the whole thing. Right. You just have to make time for it. And that's like a really important place to start. I also...
Trying to go to sleep gets my creative juices flowing so good. It's great when I need to go to sleep and it's 2 a.m. That's cherry.
That's so funny because what I was going to say is I think that a lot of times if I'm feeling overwhelmed, like sleep, I need to go to sleep immediately. Just lay down. Because I think, this is going to sound like really pompous, but I actually don't have a ton of trouble with feeling creatively blocked. And I think it goes back to what I was saying about
forcing yourself through your majors and like do this all the time.
Well, and collaboration and plays that exist and yada yada. I am not it'd be really bold to assume that I'll never experience creative block in my life though. Right. I think that happens to everybody and it just sort of depends on what you're trying to accomplish, you know what I mean? And thus far I don't struggle with that so much, but what I do struggle with is just general overwhelm where it's like there's so much on the road before me that I need to hit and like I'm gonna come up with it but I haven't come up with it yet. And I think that like going for a run or something like that, like exercising definitely is a tool people use to just let them forget about what they're doing for a while and then that helps you come back to it. Right. But I also feel like if I've hit my limit, sleep, just resting, I wake up and I'm like, okay, today's another day. I can give it another try. Or this afternoon is another chance at that.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier being able to write something down and then go away from it for a while. Whether that's sleep or just taking a little break and then just attacking it again. Or maybe not even attacking, just coming back to it with just a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, I think so. Allowing yourself that space, I think, can be important. If you've blocked enough time in your 4-month schedule to putting on a show to do that. But yeah, that's what I find is rest is good.
As artists, we are all overwhelmed and stressed all the time. Mm-hmm. Do you have any hobbies that keep you sane? Or do they complement or contradict your craft?
Right. I think it's really important to have, as a creative, some sort of creative hobbies that you aren't trying to monetize or trying to perfect or trying to make a career. Mm-hmm. I love drawing. I don't draw super often, but when I do, I feel I never feel stressed by it because I'm never doing it for anyone else but myself. So I will do that sometimes, but I'm also a perfectionist, so even I get my own head about drawing, and I'm like, well, now this has to be perfect because it's going on the wall. But the things that I do that I really don't give a crap about what they look like are like, I cross stitch, I love doing puzzles, I make these stupid little tiny house things. They're not stupid. They're very good. They're very nice. They're very cute. Yeah. And I've not even completed one, so I can't really say that that's a thing that I do. Again, there's a lot of different things.
Handcrafts.
Yeah, I dip my toes in a lot of stuff. Video games. I love video games because it's just an escape. But tons. Hobbies are really important because that's the way you can really just get away from anything that holds any expectations on that people expect you to be good at, and just be like, I'm gonna just sit here and eat chips and do a puzzle.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I think that theater was my hobby, singing, performing was my hobby, and now it's not because, like you said, I mean, we're not trying to monetize it in a way that we want to
get rich, baby.
Yeah, or not the capitalistic sense, but we want it to be self-sustaining. We want to make this something that we can do bigger,
and you're holding yourself
more diverse
to a standard.
Things. Yeah,
it's our product. It's no longer I'm in someone else's show.
Yeah, exactly. So I've actually really recently been thinking about hobbies and thinking about setting aside time for them. It's interesting because I had to read so much in college. Sometimes I would just wake up on a Saturday morning, pick up a book and read all the way until Sunday night. Like, I would just have to read 2 or 3 books a weekend. Like, that was my life in college. And I think, and I loved reading. Like, my whole life as a kid, my nose was always in a book. And then I stopped for a little while because it had been such, like, a chore.
Right.
And so recently, I've really been trying to read more and just read, like, I don't know, young adult fiction or that, like, smutty book everyone's been talking about. Like,
oh, we know which one. Throne of Glass. It's on my list.
But just, like, you know, oddly, being intentional about the hobbies I've built in. It's warmer out now, so it's like, yeah, go outside and go for a walk. I love playing volleyball, and I'm, like, trying to be more involved in that at the local YMCA. I also sew, shocker, but that oddly gets tied up in my other job too sometimes, and so, like, yeah, not being a perfectionist about it and just, like, sewing for a little while as a stress relief, and then letting myself stop when I start feeling the work mode kick in, because I think maybe hyperfixation could be the word, but it's just like, yeah, I start treating it like an activity that needs to get done.
Right.
And I think a hobby should be something that doesn't have any ending, you know? You're doing it right now for the pure enjoyment of it. So I'm sort of trying to just reframe myself and figure out what hobbies mean to me and think about intentionally what I'm feeling like when I'm doing them. And that's been kind of something I've sort of been trying to pay attention to more recently.
Totally.
Do you have any advice for somebody who is trying to start their own theater company?
Yeah.
Or maybe just trying to get into theater at all?
Oh, yeah. I think have a little more faith in yourself is what I would have told myself 2 years ago. 2 years ago, right? 1 year?
Yeah, 2020.
2020?
So,
3? Wait, really?
Yeah, I think technically 3 years ago maybe was when we started, like, writing the show.
Started, like, yeah.
Yeah, and building the company.
Conceiving.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, you know more than you think you do. Like, the imposter syndrome is so real. But trust and believe, fake it till you make it is real. Like, because there are people out here doing this, and they are executive directors, and they were you once. Like, no one just, first of all, there's not very many directing programs or programs at all that prepare you to have this job. Mm-hmm. You kind of just have to create your own thing. So, I mean, yeah, the first show that I directed on my own, I was, like, so nervous, and then I was just in it, and I was like, wait a second, I've been directed a bunch of times. I've acted a bunch of times. I know what acting is. Mm-hmm. Have a little faith in yourself is the biggest thing that I would say. And also, it doesn't, if you are enjoying your work and you are happy with what you put out, other people will see that. They'll see the joy in your work, and they will enjoy it as well, I think.
Yeah. I feel like my thoughts are just another version of yours. Don't tell yourself no. I think
that's been our mantra this year.
Yeah, really important is you know, and that means like Jasmine said, just do it at the beginning. And yeah, sorry Nike, no, I'm just kidding.
They perfected it. It's the most motivational thing in the world.
I will love an endorsement. That's fine.
Sponsor it.
Exactly. But, like, not stopping yourself, and I think that comes back to imposter syndrome, but it's really easy to think of all the ways something is going to go wrong. Yeah. And it's impossible to predict the ways they're going to go right, because there are more people that want to help you than you know. Yeah. You just need to ask for the help. And so the worst that someone can say is no. The worst that the answer could be is no in the end. But don't start by telling yourself no, because until you try, you don't actually know what's possible. And so you're the one creating limitations on yourself more often than not, is what we found.
100%.
I'd also just say that what you're technically educated in, I don't think matters. I think if you have passion, and also, like I say, I wasn't a theater major, but everything I've ever done up until this point has prepared me in one way or another for what I'm doing now. And I know plenty of talented people who, like, maybe didn't get their degree in the end, or didn't go to college for this or that or the other, but they work hard and they have passion for what they're doing, and that's enough. So again, in that sense, don't worry about what other people are gonna think about you, you know. I think this is really all the same advice, but you get in your own head more than other people ever will. And so that's what's would have stopped us in the end.
No one in the world is going to be as critical of yourself as you are.
Yeah.
Like, no one.
Yeah. And I think that theater, I mean, this is true of a lot of arts, but theater can be a really vulnerable thing, performance in general. And so, yeah, you have to just like what you're doing and kind of not give a shit about anybody else. And that's the way to get into it.
Totally.
From my own education, I've agreed with nearly everything that you've mentioned. You talked earlier about being overwhelmed with the amount of people that are also trying to be in theater as well, which can be hard. And then, Jasmine, you also talked about the confidence that you've brought in from other projects that you've done before.
Totally.
These are definitely just conflicting ideas, things that I didn't learn in school that I learned outside. Do you think it's important? Maisie, you just mentioned how education might not be necessary. Do you think an education in theater is important to go into the professional world?
I mean, well, we'll see what you think. I think that an education of some sort is important, but I don't even mean like a graduate degree or anything like that. I think that if you pursue learning above yourself, like working with people who are better than you, taking a class on the side for tap dance, reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video about the thing that you are trying to pursue, that in and of itself can be a form of education. Like, I have had a formal education and I am really appreciative for it. I think it made a big difference. But I also think that my formal education cowed me in some ways from what I'm doing now. Like, I wouldn't say that the education I received set me up to start a production company. No. I learned a lot about how to sing technically and, you know, performance in general, how to prepare a good audition, things like that. But when it comes to like fully producing a show, I was told no a lot by my professors and things like that. You know, musical theater wasn't as big a deal as like the opera program was. And also because I wasn't a major, I was taken much less seriously. And so a lot of times they're like, oh, no, you can't have a recital, or we're not going to cast you in this, that, or the other. And so I felt like my education kind of trained me in some ways in a way that I didn't want.
It almost like, to some degree, if you're not, again, we're not just bitter old bags, but like to some degree, if you're not one of the chosen children in a theater program, it can almost do really detrimental things to your confidence. And, you know, it's, I'll let you finish off that, but
I guess here's the tricky thing, right? This is true of every setting ever, but if you have a professor or just someone you know, someone you look up to who says, they could say a flippant thing to you that they never thought about again, but it sticks in your brain for like the rest of eternity, right? Which is like
haunts you for your
like,
whole life.
Hey, you're a little tone deaf, aren't you? It's like, what? You know what I mean? Right. And they don't remember saying it, but it's kind of in you forever.
Echoes through your mind for years.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this like combination of learning and unlearning. And so I guess I do think education of some kind is important. You should always be trying to better yourself and learn more from the people around you. But that doesn't necessarily mean...
Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, exactly. Take it with a grain of salt. Also realize that, like, you might learn a ton from the person who doesn't have their degree in the end, you know? But they have 30 years plus touring on the road or something like that. So just don't look any gift horse in the mouth. Always take what you can from every interaction. But at the same time, take it with a grain of salt. Yeah. Don't let it rock your confidence.
Education doesn't have to be school.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right,
that's
totally.
The long and short. Well put, Scoot. 20 minutes later.
Yeah, I think I did get a theater degree. So I went through the entire, and a music degree. So I went through the entire 4-year program for both of those in, 5.5? 4.5? 4.5
years.
I really did it. There are things that I love about the fact that I got an education, and there are things that I hate. The thing that I hate the most about having gone through school and having faced so much rejection. I feel like I can never, like, I'm getting there now, but like I'm almost 30, and I feel like the little bright-eyed theater kid that started school when she was 18 that like loved theater and loved doing anything and like didn't like have these inhibitions and these insecurities, like God, it's a little emotional, but like I feel like I've lost her forever, you know. and I'm getting back there, it's like, it's a thing about building love and confidence in yourself, but like, a lot of teachers, they really, and I think we're getting past this a little bit, but some teachers had that tough love mentality of like, oh, we just gotta like, tough love, you gotta make them, break them down and then build them back up, and I don't think that's healthy, so...
I mean, I will say, to play devil's advocate a little bit,
right.
a lot of professors and teachers will try and be that hard nose
right.
to try and teach you this is what it's like in the real world.
Yeah,
you
for sure.
will be told no a lot.
Right.
But I will also say that it is detrimental. I mean, that
degree.
that can definitely break down a young actor, if not turn them away from theater
right.
completely.
Yeah. And having been now, as a producer and director, having been on the other side of it, I'm like... to some degree, that's what it's like in the real world, but also, I, as a director, want my auditionees, I want everyone to succeed. I want them to do well. And I don't know, it's...
I guess for me, what the problem is if it was like, yep, this is like clear cut, you gotta learn the ropes, this is how the world is, across the board, that would have been one thing. If my professor was like, bringing that mentality to every single student around me.
Right.
But there were times where I felt like this person, because they fit the ingenue type more, they fit the mold of theater a little more, maybe unconsciously professors were seeing in them the potential to succeed that they were not seeing in me. And so they were teaching me about the real world because they were trying to preemptively prepare me for rejection that they were essentially...
assuming I'd have.
And they were starting that train. Whereas there was other people where they already had faith in for, a myriad of reasons. And so it felt uneven, where it's like, I feel like you are already counting me out. And I don't deserve that yet. I'm only 19.
Low-key... I am paying for this education.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the one thing where I'm like, I am paying you, so you should be 100% all... I feel like that's the thing that sometimes artistic degrees forget is like this, yes, not every kid in acting school is going to be great. They're not all going to be good, but they're still paying to grow and learn.
Yeah.
So they should still be given, maybe not equal opportunity. I understand the purpose of, teaching you, you're not going to get everything. But they still should be given some opportunity because, that's a lot of money to be thrown down the tank to graduate with. I got one named role the whole time I was in school.
Yeah.
Also,
I think something that is important to talk about here is like, we are technically doing professional theater, but we're not in New York. You know what I mean? Like, we are doing this because we love it. We have fostered love for it. And whether you are on Broadway or not, you deserve to enjoy art and participate in it. Yeah. And so, if you go to school... Yeah, if you go to school for theater and it's like, you're not going to be the next Meryl Streep, that's okay. You wanted to do this, you paid for it, and now after you're done with school, you might be an accountant, but you can go audition at the community theater and feel fulfilled in that way. So I think, you should be prepared for, like, if you were like, starry-eyed, I'm going to be on Broadway. It's like somebody could say, well, you might not be, so keep that in mind.
Right.
But... there's no reason you can't love this art and participate in it. You don't have to be the best.
Nobody can be Meryl Streep, but everybody can be their own Meryl Streep.
Yeah, I think so.
Iconic. So long story short, I don't think formal education is important, but I did learn a lot from my education. So I'm not gonna, completely shit on it, because I think I learned a lot from my directing classes and from the teachers and directors who had faith in me and the people that directed me. Like, I had some really great professors. Yeah. It just, I do feel remorse for the confidence that was lost throughout the process.
Yeah. Well, and who knows?
And maybe how long it took to gain it back,
True. But who knows? You might have just, skipped college, gone out on the road, and had a similar experience,
had somebody... who's to say what would have happened?
Yeah, exactly. So.
But, again, going back to your point, improving yourself is really important, and just taking time to continue to hone your craft and your skills.
Yep.
So, I'm taking an improv class this summer because I thought that would be fun.
Yeah.
So, just investing in yourself in one way or another. Education doesn't have to be formal, though.
Mm-hmm.
As a duo that created a theater company, kind of as the misfits, if you was, rejected from other theaters, if you will, doing more edgy things, more modern things, how do you handle criticism in your craft? Or have you gotten much criticism? You're very new. You're very young.
I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback, and I also think that, like, people aren't as likely to come up to you and be like, hated it, but that has happened.
We have gotten a little bit of negative criticism, and honestly, I'm like, yeah, it's just not your thing then. That's fine.
Yeah, I do think, personally, I don't think that anybody could be as hard on me as I am on myself.
Oh, yeah.
I'm incredibly critical of myself, and it's something I'm trying to improve, but I think that if someone is giving you true constructive criticism, then you should take it like a gift. And you don't have to employ it. You don't have to agree with it. But hearing it can be valuable. And the only person who knows how hard you worked on something is you, really. You know, and like in the long and short of it, how many hours of thought and time and energy you put into taking this idea and making it a full stage production is you. And so when somebody comes up to you and comes to the show and is like, well, it wasn't my cup of tea, or I didn't like it, or this, that, or the other, that's okay. That's okay with me. Yeah. Because I made a statement, and if it didn't fit well with them, then it's
not for them.
And that's allowed too, I think. Yeah. I myself am a critical audience member. Right. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but when I go to shows, I think it's just because I've been steeped in this, but I'm really trying to pay attention to how it came together and who's doing what on stage. And I kind of expect my audience to do the same. I expect them to come and be critical and have opinions. And so it doesn't hurt my feelings when that happens. I think if someone like was trolling me and just was like, this is the worst garbage dirt I've ever seen, they should jump off a cliff, like that would certainly hurt my
feelings.
But also that is something where it's like, that's not worth my time. So if it's true constructive criticism, I just take it in and think about it, and I can use it or not. But again, it doesn't hurt me so much because I'm incredibly critical of myself. And so I know that I've put the best I absolutely could up on the stage, and that's all I can do. Yeah. So.
And also thinking about it, like being in the director's chair too, it's like all of these actors come out vying for your attention, vying for your approval, vying for you to like them. And with the few times I have done auditions, I've tried to, like, at some point just tell people, like, you know, if they ask for feedback, I'm like, I'm just one asshole with one opinion. Like, just because maybe I didn't care for what you presented here doesn't mean it wasn't good, or it doesn't mean someone else isn't gonna love it. And also, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with what you did. Maybe you just weren't quite right for what I had in mind. So, like, being on the other side of that and, like, realizing that, I think, has made me, what am I trying to say here? It's made me kind of appreciate more the fact that, like, everybody's just going to interpret things differently, and you might not like it, I might not like something else that someone does, but it doesn't mean that it's not valuable, and that, like, there's not people who, it's that title of show song, I'd rather be 9 people's favorite thing, you know, whatever. It's, if somebody doesn't care for what I put up, then it probably wasn't for them, and again, you can criticize it, I'll take it or leave it. It's, if I agree with you, sure. If I don't agree with you, and that's what I try to tell actors too, it's like, you know, a teacher or someone might give you an opinion about your voice or about how you act. That's not the law of God. Like, if you don't agree with them, keep doing things the way you're doing. Like, you know what's best for your creativity and your output. Like, you know what makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah. So. And if all else fails, get drunk with your production partner and bitch about somebody until you feel better.
Exactly. What?
Just as a random example.
What is next for the world of MissCast Productions?
We could probably...
We are in the process of putting together our next season.
Yes. So we're hoping by the end of the summer in August to announce our full season. We are going to do a fundraiser, I think, to raise a little money in preparation for that. We do have a show booked.
We have a show that we know we can talk about.
Yeah, it's happening in December. It doesn't have a name yet.
Not yet, okay.
We got a couple of good options.
Yeah, but it's in the style of our first show that we put on. It's a
Christmas parody cabaret.
Yes, exactly.
Well, holiday parody cabaret.
Yeah, we broadened it to holiday, but we're gonna kind of experiment with holiday music you know and love and put our own spin on it, and it should be fun and silly and probably dirty and just like
Maybe
a good time.
Sad.
Yeah,
Who knows?
exactly. Like the holidays.
And how many shows do you plan to put on in one season?
3.
We're trying to do a 3-show season.
Yeah.
There will likely be a straight play in there, and the other thing, who knows?
Yeah, so we're still, in the next month or so, we're going to decide that. But yeah, show in December, probably a show in the spring, and then a show next summer. So, yeah.
And what's next for you personally, individually? Anything special going on?
I'm taking that improv class.
Amazing.
We also want to like grow ourselves as a business and a brand, so we're going to try to do stuff like making a website, email lists, trying to look more into fundraising and donations and grant writing and stuff like that, trying to make ourselves feel more solidified as a like structured business. As a personal human being, I'm going to enjoy the summer and play video games.
Yeah, I am looking forward to summer a little bit. I think the winter was long. I don't know if everybody felt that way, but it's like sun now, and I can just feel my endorphins like exploding out of my head when I stand in the sunlight, and so I'm kind of looking forward to that a little bit.
Vitamin D.
Yes, exactly.
And where can we see any MissCast Productions?
We have an Instagram.
Yes.
And we also have a Facebook.
Yes.
And a YouTube channel where the ladies who lead actually...
Yeah, you can watch one of the productions on YouTube at MissCast Productions. Looking up the ladies who lead might get you there quicker.
Yeah. And remember, it's MissCast with two S's.
MissCast Productions, because they are 2 ladies. Kick-ass ladies at that.
And yeah, Facebook is MissCast Productions. Instagram is MissCast Productions. So
yeah. We're hoping to maybe get a website in the near future. That's, also on our list of things. But yeah, I hope you will check out Ladies Who Lead. We're really proud of it. It was a fun show. And it's just free on YouTube.
We should have the horror play should be up on YouTube within the next couple months or 6 months or a year. I don't know.
It'll be less than that. We're actively working on it. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where MissCast goes. I had the pleasure of seeing your Valentine cabaret, and that was just a hoot and a half. And so I'm just really excited to see where MissCast goes. Do you have any questions for me?
I always feel bad in interviews because I'm like, well, we didn't talk about you at all today, Scoop.
We can talk later.
Blabbed away. But thank you so much for having us on and expressing interest. It's nice to talk about what we're doing when we're not under duress of the next production,
Right.
kind of like to think about what we've done and where we're going, and we could be a little proud of ourselves, I guess. So.
You should be
proud.
Why
not?
You created a whole theater production company, and you've done shows. I was telling you before this, like, I'm written/writing a musical, and I can't even fathom the idea of fundraising or trying to cast something or finding a venue. Like, those things are just like, I got to tackle that someday, and I might be reaching out to you about advice and all.
Yes, well, we've messed up enough that we can give you some advice,
And that,
so you don't have to.
Welcome to art.
Yes, exactly.
People mess up all the time, and that's okay. Well, thank you so much, and I can't thank you enough for being here and piquing my interest about your craft. And to all my peakers out there, please let me know if there's any special or unique artist or art forms that you think I should explore. Remember, creativity comes from the heart. Push yourselves, be kind to each other. I'm Scoop Decker, and I thank you for helping me pique my interest.